my fellow Americans, do not move to the Twin Cities without watching this video first. Stick around. How's it going, y'all? My name is Jesse Lynch, and this YouTube channel is devoted to two things. First is all things Twin Cities, living in the Twin Cities. This is where I'm from. This is where I grew up. It's where I still live. I love it, and I love to share the Twin Cities. And then also all things buying, selling, investing in real estate here in the Twin Cities. I put out 2 videos a week, so subscribe. Click the little bell to get notified. Say what's up. I look forward to talking to you. I look forward to meeting you. Okay, so what is this video? This video is just basically things that you should know before you move to the Twin Cities, or things that people from the Twin Cities take for granted, know about, whatever, that when you come here, you might be like, what are you talking about? And there's quite a few things. It's a rather idiosyncratic place. I'm sure everywhere is, but yeah, the Twin Cities, without exception, is rather idiosyncratic. Just some weird things, some great things, but I want you to know what you're talking about so you don't look like an outsider when you move here. First things first, maybe you can tell by listening to me, but the accent, the Minnesotan accent that you hear in Fargo, it's BS, mostly. Okay, we don't all sound like William H. Macy in Fargo, but there are some things that a lot of people say. That's just something that you're going to hear in Minnesota. Most importantly of which is ope. O-P-E. Ope. Ope, right? Ope is the sound that we make when we bump into somebody or almost bump into somebody. Why? I don't know. I say it. I for sure say it. If somebody is walking into a door and I don't see him, and then we're oh, right? I just said it. I didn't even try. Ope is a thing that you're going to hear all the time. One funny fact that I did hear is ope is a bad thing to say in Sweden. So if you develop the habit, when you go to Sweden, be careful. The other thing that comes to mind to me, which was how it was first pointed out to me that I did have some sort of a Minnesotan accent, is the word bag. If you're from Minnesota, you might say bag. Okay, I don't know why. That's how I grew up saying it, bag. Hey, do you want a bag? I say it now, I feel like I'm saying a totally different language. Hey, do you want a bag for your groceries? It's so strange, but that is how people say it in Minnesota a lot of the time. Another thing is pop. Pop is soda, not soda pop. If you say soda pop, you sound like you're from 40s, but just pop, right? Like, hey, do you want a pop? You go to a movie, you get popcorn and pop. Okay, I say soda because it is ubiquitous across the land. You can say soda. People know what you're talking about. But if you go to, Texas and say, hey, can I get a pop? People might look at you funny. Here in Minnesota, you can say pop. It is allowed. I think it's weird because I sort of trained myself out of it. I guess because I traveled and I said pop and people, were like, what are you saying? And, I learned to not say that because generally it's just not what people are used to hearing. Okay, enough about how we speak. That's not that big of a deal, but I do want you to know that if you come here hoping that you're going to, hear a bunch of Finlanders, talking like this, then you might have to go really far up north, okay? As close to Canada as possible, and you will begin to hear things like that, especially if you talk to some old people along the North Shore maybe, you might run into it. Speaking of old people up north, the weather in Minnesota is cold, okay? We get a really cold winter. It can last 6 months. When I grew up, there was this monster blizzard on Halloween, October 31st, and I don't know, in the last couple years, it has snowed all the way through April.
October, November, December, January, February, March, April.
6 months, that's half the year. That's ridiculous. But hey, that's what it is. I think it keeps people humble. Prince said it keeps the assholes out. I think. He might have just said keeps the bad people out. Whatever. Rest in peace, Prince. I didn't even put this on my list as things to know about Minnesota, but people love Prince here. He's our guy. Personally, I went to an audio school in downtown Minneapolis, and like all the teachers had worked with Prince. I got kind of sick of hearing his name. I know if you're from Minnesota, you can't say anything bad about Prince. I know. If you're not from Minnesota and you come here, just be careful what you say about Prince, okay? Okay, back to the weather. It's cold. Duh, everybody knows that. But if you move here, I want you to be able to be prepared, okay? There are a few things that you can do for yourself that will greatly take some of the pain out of winter. I talked about it in my pros and cons video, but I think the number one most important thing that you can do is buy a remote car starter, okay? Especially if you get one that works a long ways away. That way, if you're in the grocery store, you're at the checkout, you can press it, you can start the car, and by the time you come out to it, it'll be warm. It will be very helpful, I promise. Okay, the next thing is either have a car that has four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, or buy snow tires. Right now, I have a truck that has four-wheel drive. It's great. The winter is much easier with four-wheel drive. However, in the past, I've had cars with two-wheel drive, front-wheel drive. God forbid you have back-wheel drive. Not awesome. But if you have a two-wheel drive car, if you can get snow tires, they make handling the snow 100 times easier. Truly, so much easier. You are way less likely to break traction. You stop sooner. It's softer rubber, and it just grips the road better. That being said, if you get snow tires, you either want to have a set of rims for your vehicle that are just for your snow tires, maybe like crappy rims that can rust or whatever, and you don't care. And then you can have a different set for the summer, or every year you're just going to have those tires put on and taken off. It's not that big of a deal. You just go to the tire place. And, they're in Minnesota. They're accustomed to it. And one thing that I would honestly recommend that's a very old person thing, like a mom and dad thing to say, is that you should have some sort of a car safety kit, especially for the winter. One of the biggest things being jumper cables. And if you're not from a cold area, you might not know that sometimes really cold weather will make a battery not start. It's pretty weird, but the most common battery issues happen in the dead of winter in Minnesota. I don't know why. I'm not a scientist. Another thing that would be good: keep a coat in the car, keep gloves, keep a hat in the car. The weather gets so cold sometimes that if you're on some country road or even a side road where you're not close to anybody and your car breaks down, if the car can't run heat, the car will very quickly get cold, because we have temperatures 20, 30 below sometimes, which, by the way, is when a car is most likely to fail. And if you get stuck and you don't have a means to stay very warm, then you might be in a bunch of trouble. So those things are important to keep. Some of them also have hazard lights. Some of them have a blanket, an aluminum blanket that holds heat in really well. Not a bad idea. And one of the last bits on driving is that when it gets really cold, we get a thing called black ice. Because it's so cold, at stop signs specifically, what happens is cars sit at a stop sign or a stop light for a long time. Their exhaust slowly heats up the snow, the ice, or it drips condensation. And then right where everybody is used to stopping because there's a stoplight ahead, that turns to ice. And so when you're coming up to a stop sign or a stoplight in the winter, especially when it's really cold, do not trust that your car is going to stop. I've lived here my whole life, and I still am surprised at times of, I just don't get to stop. Did you hear that? I said, fun. Okay, so that is it for the cold weather. The next thing is basically the roads, okay, the highway systems and the roads. I'm not going to go that deep into it, but there is a couple things to know. Okay, 35E and 35W. Okay, I-35 goes from Duluth, Minnesota, and it basically goes all the way down to Dallas, maybe further. Okay, but I-35, whatever, it goes all the way from Texas up to Minnesota, and it does this a few other times along the way, but it splits off into a 35E and a 35 West. As you go east goes through St. Paul, because that's on the eastern side. As you go W, that goes west, that goes through Minneapolis. Okay, basically at Lakeville, it splits, and then up by Forest Lake, I believe, it connects back up. So that creates this ring around the Twin Cities. 94, right? I-94 basically splits Minneapolis and St. Paul into a north and south half. But before it splits Minneapolis and St. Paul in half, it branches off into two different highways, 694 and 494. So 94 goes through the middle, 694 goes north, 494 goes south, and they meet back up on the eastern half of the cities. So those are some of the biggest highway systems in Minnesota. I think if you can just understand that and how they work, you will have a better grasp on the highway system. That being said, I'm going to go away from the highway system. I'm going to go just to the Minneapolis street name system. This is just a mnemonic device that I made up. Maybe like 10 years ago, I drove a pedicab, which is like a bicycle taxi, and I drove it through downtown Minneapolis. And it was fun while it lasted. Something that I really had to do in that time was learn how the roads work in Minneapolis, because people would be like, I'm going to go to 10th and Nicollet, and I'd be like, I have no idea where that is. So one mnemonic device that I want to send your way. Overwhelmingly, avenues run north and south. And the way that I remember that is avenue, sometimes abbreviated AV. They go from Twin Cities to Apple Valley, which is in the south. So north and south. I know, not the best mnemonic device, but this one is easier. Streets tend to go east and west. So if you're in Minneapolis, you could go to St. Paul, ST. The street names in Minneapolis are just the numbers. That's not totally true, but overwhelmingly the streets that run west to east are called streets, and they are numbered names. I happen to know the southwest Minneapolis names a little bit better than I know anywhere else, so they tend to be alphabetized names. Okay, just for example, in southwest Minneapolis, starting at Lyndale, okay, Lyndale's a main street, so it doesn't count as part of the alphabetized thing. However, if you go one block west from Lyndale, you get Aldrich. Next one is Blaisdell, Colfax, DuPont, Emerson, Fremont. You get the point, and then eventually the alphabet begins again after a certain road. I don't know what that road is, but if you ever find yourself in that situation, you can know that from Aldrich to Emerson, it's A, B, C, D, E. It's 5 blocks away. Pretty helpful. So that is how the Minneapolis roads work, kind of. That's kind of a run through. And here's how St. Paul roads work. I have no idea. St. Paul roads are so crazy. If you are in St. Paul, I don't know. You're kind of on your own. You just got to get used to it. You got to memorize what streets are where, because I don't have any mnemonic devices to help you out with that at all. Apologies. Okay, and maybe this is already obvious based on how I spoke about our highway system, but if you're coming from California, we do not call our highways the 35 or the 494, okay? It's just called 494. It's just called 35W. It's just called I-94. Okay, that makes sense? Yeah. Another thing to know is that generally, St. Paul is a much slower paced city than Minneapolis. St. Paul is the capital, yes. It was the earlier city, yes. However, Minneapolis is a much bigger city at this point, much higher population, and just a much more happening place. There's just a lot more going on. One of St. Paul's official mottos is the most livable city in the world or in the country or something like that. Which, yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe. An unofficial motto of St. Paul is keep St. Paul boring. I used to live there. I really liked living there. It was very chill, very peaceful. Maybe boring's good in this situation. Minneapolis's motto, I don't even remember what it is, but it's a French word. It just means forward. Okay. Next thing that maybe you should know is that biking is super, super popular here. We are basically in this constant battle for most bike-friendly city in the country with Portland. One thing to know is that if you're driving in the Twin Cities, specifically in downtown Minneapolis, parts of northeast Minneapolis, and definitely uptown Minneapolis, is to watch out for bikes. Technically, bikes by law can take up a whole lane of traffic in Minneapolis. Don't honk at them, okay? They literally have the right of way. go around them. Maybe it's annoying, but you know who it's great for? People who bike through the city. So what are you going to do? Here is a cliche that everybody basically talks about. If you've looked up anything, any like blogs about things to know about Minnesota, one thing that literally always is on every one of them is stuff about going up north. Okay, up north is what we mean by just north. North, anywhere basically north of the Twin Cities metro. If there's a place to stay, a cabin, or camping, people will just say, I'm going up north. Maybe like how people in New York say upstate. We're going upstate. All that means is we're just going to the northern part of Minnesota, which, by the way, is beautiful. If you haven't watched my video yet about the best weekend getaway in the Twin Cities, you should. It's about basically the North Shore. I show some pretty cool areas. I sort of half grew up there after my parents divorced, and I have an affinity for the area indeed, but for sure it is the most beautiful part of the state. A couple other beautiful parts of the state are like the bluffs of southeast Minnesota, like Winona, Red Wing, Wabasha, that whole area. Technically it is part of the driftless area, which is really cool. You can look that up. Really good fly fishing down there, so I'm told. I have a friend who loves it. And I guess people come from all over the country, potentially all over the world, just to fish in the driftless area. It is beautiful and apparently great fly fishing. Who'd have thunk it? If you're going up north, bring some bug repellent. The mosquitoes are insane up there. And sometimes it's not just mosquitoes, it's horseflies and mayflies. The bugs are bigger up there. And also when you're driving up there, prepare for some traffic. Okay, for one, in the summer, Minnesota constantly has road construction because they can only do the road construction 6 months out of the year, basically. And if you're like, hey, I work Monday through Friday, I'm going to get off work at 5 p.m., I'm going to pack the kids and my spouse in the car, and we're going to take a little trip up north. That might be the worst time that you can leave the Twin Cities to head up north because of the traffic. The traffic is serious around that time, so if you can, try to work a half day on that Friday, or, in my opinion, just spare yourself the agony and go up early on Saturday. Hold on to your hats for this transition. Speaking of northern food, we have a thing in Minnesota called hot dish. Hot dish is a casserole. It's a thing that I grew up eating. Basically everybody I know grew up eating, or at least had a couple times, but it's a very Scandinavian thing. It's just a giant dish with noodles and meat and sauce and cheese, and then it's baked, and then it's a thing. Okay, this is how just like omnipresent hot dish is in Minnesota, at least when I was growing up. I grew up referring to a hot dish as Lois Hannerhan's hot dish. And that's just what we called it. That's what my whole family called it. Oh yeah, mom made Lois Hannerhan's today. Cool. It turns out it's just called tater tot hot dish. Everybody else calls it tater tot hot dish. I'm not kidding. Everybody else calls it tater tot hot dish. But my grandma just happened to get the recipe from her neighbor or friend or something, Lois Hannerhan, and I grew up calling it Lois Hannerhan's hot dish. So shout out to Lois Hannerhan's and shout out to tater tot hot dish. Okay, so now if you're moving from Minnesota, from out of state, I gotta warn you, this is something that just be careful. Don't talk shit about the Minnesota State Fair. I'm from here, so I feel like I can a little bit, but even then, I'm pretty careful. People take their fair very seriously. In fact, this year, because of COVID, they canceled it, and people were not stoked at all about that. They call it the Great Minnesota Get-Together. I didn't really go to it that much growing up, so I don't quite have the affinity for it that some people do. But some people are real serious about it. It basically lasts like 10 days or something. I think the last day typically is Labor Day. But basically, if you don't like people watching, delicious but bad for you, deep fried food on a stick, questionable fair rides, which I don't know if there's been any like major issues or big injuries or anything, but I don't know. Something about those like portable fair rides just freaks me out. And then basically there's okay music. And I'm biased, I'm a musician, I'm a music snob, I apologize. It's pop music, country music, classic rock music, and then, I don't know, maybe a little bit of hip hop music, maybe? People like it, I don't know. A couple rapid fire things to know. deep fried candy bars, Sweet Martha's cookies, refillable milk, alligator. Last thing that I'm going to talk about in this video is a little thing called the Minnesota goodbye. You will, without a doubt, run into the Minnesota goodbye if you meet people who are from Minnesota. Say you come here and you date somebody who's from Minnesota and then you meet their family. My God, hold on your hat. You, my friend, are in for a treat. You're going to experience a goodbye, which typically a goodbye is like, hey, good to see you. Yeah, you too. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye. That's how one normally goes in Minnesota. It's like, oh, man, it was so good to see you. Oh, it's really good to see you too. All right, well, you have a good one. Yeah, you too. Hey, before you leave, I got to tell you this thing about this thing. And then, oh my God, that's amazing. And then the conversation that happens for like 15 more minutes. And then, okay, sorry, I know you got to get on your way. Yeah, we really do. But man, it's been so good to see you. It's been really good to see you too. We got to do this again soon. Yeah, I know. You know, I was just talking to your brother about this, and he was saying he wished he could be here. And we were like, God, we'd love to have you. And then another conversation for 15 minutes. An hour later, you're out of there. So if you know that you got to be home by 10 because maybe you have a babysitter that has to be done by 10, or you have a dog and they're going to pee on the floor or something if you don't get home in time. If you know you have to be home by 10, announce your departure at 9 p.m. Okay? I'm telling you, you will be glad you did. Worst case scenario, you're out by 9:15 and you're home early. But much more likely than that, you're going to experience a Minnesota goodbye and you're going to get home right on time because that's how it works here. Why? I don't know. Because we're nice, okay? Because we're nice and we like people, okay? So there are worse things than a long goodbye, so embrace it. Welcome to Minnesota. If you are moving here, get a hold of me, call, text, email, DM me on Instagram, DM me on Facebook, write me a handwritten letter, send me a postcard, whatever you got to do. Get a hold of me. I look forward to meeting you, and I hope this video was helpful. It was fun to make, and honestly, all jokes aside about all like the negatives, it's an awesome place to live. I hope you come here. I hope we hang out. We did it. We did it, y'all. All right. Love you. Bye-bye.